In today's video, I plan to cover the basic concept and components that I use to build my 12-volt hot water heater that hangs on the roof for taking showers. So I start off with a basic shower tube. This is 4-inch ABS with end cap at each end, and I like the Y fitting at the one end for the faucet. I chose the Y shape because I can angle it outwards a little bit and still have it drain all the water out of the tube. I recommend if you're making one of these that you use a sealed end cap like this one. I tried using a screw-in fitting cap on the other end and it was very difficult to nearly impossible to seal it. I tried drilling a hole and putting in this fitting at the top to make a fill spout, but I think I would recommend just buying one that's ready-made. I went with the ball valve faucet because it's so much smaller and more compact, and it only takes a quarter turn to open and close the faucet. To mount the faucet, I bought a threaded PVC fitting. The one on the right has the threads on the wrong side, so when I cut it short, it ruined the fitting. The one in the center has the threads in the right location. And I used the ABS to PVC glue to glue this fitting into the Y. I used an automotive tire valve in order to give it an air breather and in order to pressurize the tube if I wanted to. I removed the center core to let the air flow through that valve. So these are the components I started with to make the shower. That's a 4-inch by 2-inch ABS fitting. That's a PVC fitting that's a slip 2-inch and 1.5 inch threaded. The metal one is a 1.5 inch outside thread, 1-inch inside thread, and then the heating element is 1-inch threading to fit into those. The heating element has two elements. They are each 150 watts. Combined, it's 300 watts. In actuality, I measured about 187 watts per element. There are 4 plugs. One goes on the heating element, one goes in the car, and 2 go on that length of wire. It's all 10 gauge. I used this BlueSea app to figure out the wire size. With DC, the length of the wire is twice the actual distance. So if it's 10-foot run, it's 20-foot length of wire. I'd planned to use this Y fitting, but in actuality, I discovered that the heating element didn't go very far into that tube. So, plan B, I ended up with a T. The heating element fit much better into the tube. Next step was gluing it together. Once glued, the element fit in perfectly in good depth, and I glued this horizontally to put the element as deep as possible into the water. This is a backpack closed cell foam pad, and I used Gorilla Glue to spray glue that to the tube. I discovered that wind chill while driving prevented the tube from getting very hot while I was trying to heat it. I also found that the galvanized fitting rusted, so I ended up having to buy a stainless steel replacement. So the element and its connection was kind of exposed there, so I ended up buying a 2-inch rubber coupling to protect it. I drilled a couple holes to put the wires through, picked up a 2-inch threaded cap and wrapped the threads with gaffer's tape so it would be a nice snug fit. The heating element comes with a pair of jumpers so that both elements run at the same time. I removed one because I only wanted to use one element at a time, and then I made a jumper in order to connect the other heating element. And here's the cap in drive mode, and it's gone many thousands of miles and stayed in place. I bent a piece of threaded rod in order to bolt down the tube to my unistrut. Unfortunately, over time, the sun has begun to degrade the closed cell backpacking pad that I used for insulation, so I decided to insulate it some more. I bought some cheap knockoff Reflectix at Home Depot, and the first thing I discovered was the label was not removable. Then I quickly discovered that the Reflectix pictured on the right, it was about twice as thick as this stuff I had just gotten. So the Reflectix type insulation requires an air gap to help it be an insulator, so I used some strips of Reflectix to create an airspace. I then used the remaining Reflectix that I still had scraps of and did a first layer of insulation. For the next layer, I did a one single piece wrap, which I then sealed to the tube with the silver duct tape. To finish that all off, I used this all-weather tape in black to wrap the entire tube and then finish that off with some black spray paint. And lastly, I made a chart before I insulated this tube, how efficient and how quickly it heated water, starting out at 58 degrees and ending up to 108 degrees. Took me 2.5 hours and consumed 36 amp hours of battery. That was using one heating element that ran about 178 watts. So I hope that's enough information if you want to try to build one of these. If there's some questions, be sure to write in the comments. Thanks for watching and check out my other YouTubes.